Hey everybody, welcome back to Great Mondays Radio. The coffee's hot, and I am so excited to have Tony Stubblebine on. He is the CEO of Medium, a brand and a platform that I have been a fan of for a very long time. He's doing some very interesting things since he came on board as the CEO when it has to do with culture. For those of you who don't know, Medium is an online blogging platform. It's a great place to read and write, is really how they describe that. And so I'm super excited to have Tony because he's made some choices about culture that I think I said to him before we started, I think that they're sort of leading and a leading indicator of sort of where things are going. So we're going to learn about his culture and what it is like to run an entirely remote organization. Tony, welcome to Great Mondays Radio.
Josh, thank you for having me. Yeah, these are all good topics. I'm excited to talk about them.
All right, so let's dive right in. I saw you post online that you made a choice recently to bring your team together, who are remote and they're
Yeah,
global, and you're bringing them
yeah,
together twice a year. How did you get to that decision? What is that like? What are you covering? Why is this important?
yeah, exactly. This is, we're an 80-person organization. We had gone fully remote at the beginning of the pandemic. And then 2 years ago, I took over. And so it was my opportunity in that moment to rethink the culture, both for where the company was and also what it meant to be post-pandemic. And one thing that's obvious is weren't ever going back to an office. By the time we got out of the pandemic, we had a team that was fully remote and that spanned California to Paris. And you could just tell that there were going to be problems. And as I've talked to other CEOs, I've found that some people are able to design their culture to be completely asynchronous. So it's like they're handing documents around and everything just kind of flows through process. And for them, they're really loving remote and succeeding. But we found that we, to be successful, we really needed to be successful at working cross-functionally. And I think this is just specific to our business. Like I know there are other businesses that have that same need, and like and and it's driven not by any preference, but by the product that we're trying to build, which in product design, a two-sided marketplace is
Yep,
traditionally the most complicated to build.
yep.
And that complication requires a lot of different skill sets talking. And we just kept having the experience that um, some problems were too big to figure out over Zoom. And so we decided we would try a full company offsite. This was, um, I guess this is like October of 2022. We bought out an auto camp, which is a cool location where everyone stayed in an Airstream trailer, and we had
Hmm.
a full-time access to a common area, and we had it catered. We
What
bought it
city?
out. This was in the Catskills.
Very cool.
Um, uh, and it was like an immediate success. It You could see it working on every level, just the
Mm.
human level of people that had never met in person and what that felt like to meet in person and how they worked afterwards. But even on the short-term business level, there was a project that came out of that offsite that paid for the entire offsite within 10 days of the offsite ending,
Well,
right?
that
And
all
so
right. That's
I've
that's
always I exactly right. This is like rule of thumb, whenever possible, have a clear business justification so no one ever doubts all of these softer justifications, which do matter, but it's
yeah.
like it's really nice to have this really clear justification. And so every offsite we've done has generated immediate business for us. And then the harder to measure part is everyone loves it and
Yeah.
feels like it's necessary to working smoothly.
What let's just get some of the basics out of the way. For that one versus maybe as they've evolved, how many days are we talking?
Yeah, so we've evolved a little bit, but the basic is to think of Monday and Friday as travel days, and Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday as the time together. Uh, we've sort of had to fight a little bit of a um, um, an understanding gap. It's like, we've heard of companies doing retreats, and
Yeah.
retreats kind of sound like a perk. And we've just been really clear, these are working meetings, right? Like we're here to work. And we
That's how
do,
you call them. That's what you say. You're like,
yeah,
okay, here our working meetings coming up. It's gonna be here
yeah,
5 days. And we don't use that language. We don't use retreat language. Hey, it's gonna
exactly.
be you're gonna hanging out at the pool.
Yeah. So there's a little bit of team building because what you kind of you have to, and there's time for it. But the headline of everything is, we're there to work together. And then the one to like you mentioned already, like did that evolve? The one way that that's evolved is you could tell that people liked where we were going, and so they were adding on days, and we were getting this benefit of them coming earlier in time zone adjustment, like especially our French team,
Hmm.
like they show up so tired. And so we've started paying for hotel rooms ahead of the start of the offsite. So people are coming on a Friday or a Saturday or Sunday, they're more adjusted. That we have their full energy when we're during the work sessions. And in that way, maybe it's a little bit of a perk, but I also, again, I think of the business reason as the
Yeah.
overriding reason. Is like it costs so much to get us all together. I want people at their best.
Okay. So that was what did you say? 20, what year was the first one?
2022.
2022. Take us from there to I've realized that we need to do this twice a year. How did you? Because
Yeah.
I think it's a big ask for, especially for a small org, a smaller org like Medium, to be like, all right, bring everybody together. And now you're saying, actually, we're going to bring everybody in twice a year.
Yeah. It was such a eye opener that it was possible, right? It's like,
Huh.
we didn't know you could buy out a place, right? And we didn't know for sure it would be successful, but doing it once was a confidence builder. And especially since it paid for itself within 10 days, we immediately started planning the second one. And the second one was even more important because our big initial job here was a financial turnaround to make Medium a profitable company.
Yep.
And a lot, like the majority of the groundwork that we did, we've succeeded, by the way. The majority of the groundwork that we did was in the second offsite. So we knew there were still urgent things, and we just had we were coming off the confidence of the first one, and so we scheduled the second one for the um it ended up being in May of 2023 in Austin. That time we tried a hotel buyout, but similar structure to the first one. And I think what you say is right. It's so much to run one of these that you can't do it too often. And so it just felt natural, just even like before you even get into it, that two is as many as you could do a year.
Hmm.
Um, but that one would not be sufficient. So I think we settled pretty quickly on two a year as a practical decision. Being in person is really powerful, but we're never going to go back to the office. So a practical solution would be to do two a year. And I've started to see this now as the modern standard for fully remote companies. Either you build a culture that can survive fully async, and those companies actually think meeting in person undercuts the async processes. But
Huh.
that's not us.
Right.
Or you do what we do, which is two offsites a year. I keep running into peers that are doing exactly two offsites a year.
Interesting. All right, so we're starting to see this. Okay, so I now want to get into the you talked about there's the practical benefits, right? The fiscal benefits, which I'm interested in sort of what the structure of, the offsite is, and we'll get to that in a second. But tell me, so you've already got some like product ideas that are coming out of this, and I think we'll get into this, but what are that other piece, that sort of softer stuff? And I've been advocating for, hey, you really can't replace in-person work,
Yeah.
in-person, just time, right? Shared space to build those relationships. I'd like to hear from you in your experience. What are some of those benefits that aren't that are a little softer, a little fuzzy, a little more relationship or emotional, or what have you seen?
The greatest was the first one. We had the team rank offsites. And not ever, now we have newer people that haven't been to, we've done four now. But everyone who's been to all four ranked the first one as the best. And they all basically gave the same reason, which is it was the first time they'd ever met each other. And I just think like you can never discount how much work is a social activity. No matter how much you try to rationalize it and make it about dollars and cents, it's, essentially it's a opportunity for us to all have some group endeavor together. And it's really unnatural to do that with people you've never met. So that first offsite had, I mean, I wouldn't even call it like facilitation. It was just being in proximity to each other.
Yeah,
People were vibrating.
yeah.
And that's not even a hyperbolic word, it's like they hadn't been in a group setting since before the pandemic, and they were hungry to be around each other. And
So
so
it was
there's
like
just been like, yeah,
energy maybe I'm hearing like, right, what's like, so that was the result, and then the
yeah,
outcome. I'm
yeah,
thinking when I hear you say vibrate, it's like they're energized and they're engaged, right? These are the things that I think a lot of organizations are fighting. They're like, oh, everybody's burnt out.
yeah,
Everybody's,
yeah,
like depressed. So this is you got people together, and hey, look, all of a sudden
yeah,
they're like you said, vibrating together.
yeah. Right. I think my management doesn't put too much weight on managing people's energy, because I do know it ebbs and flows.
Of course.
Although now that you asked the question, yes, I can see how it created energy that lasted after the offsite. I think I would put my finger on trust,
Mm,
that fundamentally you have to, especially in a cross-functional problem,
yeah.
you have to trust other people, that their perspective matters, that their feedback on your work is coming from a constructive place. And I think knowing the people you work with raises the level of trust by one or two orders of magnitude. And that is maybe the soft benefit that I'm looking for from these offsites.
You can't, yeah, I would not argue with that. That's I agree. I think, trust is the
Well,
the center point of a culture, and being able to work together, being able to be efficient. Okay, so then let's talk about what you guys actually get done. And I do want to get to the idea of like extrapolating what can I learn, right? So, or what can the people
yeah,
that are listening to this learn? What can other leaders learn? Like when you and there's sort of this purposeful attention. I keep saying that offsites are the new onsite. No, onsite is the
yeah,
new
yeah,
offsite, right? Where it's like
right,
you show up to work and you're actually working on a problem together. So what kinds of
yeah,
problems are you working with? What kind of structure? We definitely got some, offsite nerds that listen to this. So what kind of structure are you putting together? And then I'm going to think about how to extrapolate that. What are the lessons? How do we kind of, extract it from the kind of medium specific approach?
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think you're right that offsites is the wrong word. I mean, today we're offsite. These two in-person meetings are the only times all year that we're on site
On-site.
together.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, so they really, right. I mean, they're misnamed. They really are our only on sites each year. Um, we we found that each offsite has time for an educational component. Like, here's a part of the business that you might not fully understand, and we want you to understand it better. It has time for a single problem that spans the whole company, or sometimes two problems, and parts of the company are either gravitating to one or the other. and then in-person team time. So our company is kind of matrix. We have what we call durable teams around product areas, and those are cross-functional. And then we have departments, and so both versions of that try to meet separately because the problems that they need to work out in person are, invisible at my level. Like
Yeah, you don't know.
I don't know, I don't know what they
Yeah.
are. But I do tend to know what I think the next thing we need to understand as a company is, like what is the thing we're trying to educate on, and then what is the big problem? Like, the second offsite was, okay, there's like 5 bets we could make, but we need to pick one or two that we think could get us all the way to profitability, which was our, that's not a strange goal for a business, but in Silicon Valley, sometimes people go a long way without
Yes.
really trying to get to that. But that was our mandate. We needed to be able to do that. And so that was the problem. And that's a really big problem. And we decided as a group and then broke it down into
Mm.
uh projects and tasks even. And that, for me, that was wild because to watch like in real time, like a 2 sentence goal turn into 400 tasks, and the whole team just, I think when you talk about energy, it's the energy to adopt a goal. Like that happened better in real time, I think, than if it had
Uh,
been hey, here's my Slack post. Could I get your plans by the end of the
I'm
week, etc.
I'm getting chills. I'm getting chills because I hadn't thought of it that way, but you're exactly right. Like, how long would it have taken to do this completely remote? And then you wouldn't have that momentum and buy-in because by
Yeah,
the time you get to the last person, the first person's like, oh yeah, we got to go back to this thing. So
yeah,
that is a really, really powerful insight. Like, okay, we're gonna not just, I thought you were gonna say, hey, we were gonna make this big choice, but you said we made this big choice and then we actually operationalized it. And that
yeah,
like now I can go back. We can be asynchronous in different time zones and we have our tasks. And you know what?
yeah,
We know that that's a great way to get tasks done.
yeah. Right. So that and that's why we think twice a year, like
Why would
because
you
it
not,
really,
right? Like you're like all of a sudden
yeah,
it's like, oh, of course.
right. I've broken down the cost. I think the cost ends up being about a third the cost of what we would have paid in rent if we were in person all the time. So it's not cheap, but it's not like outside the realm of what you would spend to run a business.
Yeah. So my secret one of my secret goals of our conversation is to be able to convince, and I've had more than one leader say, what if we can't? What if we just don't have the resources to bring people together? And
Yeah,
it to me, and you've just, put your finger on it. It's not we can't, it's we've decided not to, right? It's a
yeah,
business, it's a business acceptable way to say we've deprioritized. This is just not important, I
yeah,
think. And so it's like, okay, Josh, you say it's really important, but what if we can't? What are some ways? And you're like, well, okay, there's ways around it. There's ways you can do it, but what you just described, there is no substitute really
right.
for doing that. I don't know. I just don't, I just, I'm not sure it's possible.
I, I I have one note about our situation, which is we were really comfortable or really confident at the leadership level that we knew how to make money. And
Hmm.
so our feeling is that every second the team is working on the wrong thing, we're wasting a lot of money. Like the most expensive thing that can happen to us is the team working on the wrong thing. And I can imagine if I was less confident, like, and I've seen this with a lot of other CEOs, when they're less confident in where they're going, they kind of put the company into a holding pattern. So, if there's not clear direction, getting the whole team together
Doesn't
might,
benefit.
yeah, it doesn't benefit. And but at the same time, they're not ready to do layoffs or
Yeah.
whatever is required in that situation. Um, I think that's why I'm so clear-eyed about it,
Yeah.
is because I knew where my uh, waste was. My waste is in an inefficient team, not in and so I can spend money to make money there, right?
Yeah.
And spend money on efficiency pays off faster than I realized.
Yeah.
10 days in that first
Yeah.
example.
So yeah, so it moves from an when you are not clear on your or not confident about your strategic goals and your ability to be profitable, then it's a nice to have. Hey, we should get
Yeah,
together, build trust. But when you have that ability to say, hey, we are moving in this right direction and we need everybody to move, it's an alignment, it's an exercise in alignment. And so it's not just a um gravitational togetherness, it's it's both this and this direction, right? It's both a
sure,
bringing
right.
together for those just listening and not
Yeah,
watching my hands. It's both coming together and bringing my hands together and then pushing them forward, right? So that then you really have this kind of exponential benefit coming together. And then that's so I like this sort of the realization that I'm having where it's like, nice to have, sure, that's fine. How do else do to have to have? We're gonna
yeah,
get rid of this waste. We're going to realign people. We're going to make some strategic choices, and boom, now we're back. We
yeah.
got energy going. Once we go back to our
In the
separate
right
places.
direction, right. Yeah.
Yeah. That's fantastic. Okay. So let's wrap it up with a few just sort of questions around the sort of fully remote uh, challenges and maybe a few wins that you've had, just even outside of, let's just zoom out outside of the working sessions, the on-site offsite. What have you learned about running a fully remote company? Where were you surprised that like there was a big challenge that you didn't expect? And maybe, have you observed additional, not that you need more wins than the on-site because it's pretty good, but where have you seen some of those wins?
Um, it's hard for me to parse out the difference between being remote. We've changed a lot of things, but how much of what's happening is specific to a turnaround and how much is specific to being
Mm,
remote? And
okay.
so I just like I think the listener should take a be a little bit wary of this answer, but it might work for both.
I appreciate
The
that.
thematic uh like the main theme of a turnaround, as has been explained to me and as I've experienced it, is that you're building confidence. Because, like, essentially, I'm a stranger coming into a company of people who have somewhat low morale and sort of, learned helplessness. Like, nothing they've done in recent memory has worked. And there's a fair amount of fear because, of course, the very first thing that happens is a layoff. Like, literally, I had to plan a layoff in order to get the job, right? Like, that's because like everything is broken, right? And so from there, we have to build the confidence of a team that their work matters and that the company will succeed. And management is not like actually new management actually knows what they're talking about. Like all of this
Yeah.
really, really
Yeah.
tricky and hard in person and hard remote as well. And so the things that I think that are kind of remote specific that um, helped me is like I tend to be very transparent and I like to write. So for people that are curious, I'll write up a memo and said, here, here's what happened, right? And give them all of that. And so I think uh I think transparency has been a real uh like a real theme and like why people have felt confidence in my leadership and felt confidence in the direction of the company. And I think that's actually easier to do remote, right? Because um, people have a reading orientation anyways. Otherwise, how do they keep track of the company?
Mm,
Um, so that's like probably the biggest thing, and this is partly my own personality too, is I like to teach, I like to share. There's some like right now we're doing a whole education on startup equity. And, it wasn't necessary, but it's a complicated topic and I like to teach it. And so
Yeah.
that would be one piece that I think is
It's
like we haven't gotten at. Yeah.
Can I reflect on that for a second? It
Yeah.
sounds to me like you're talking about access. You
Mm,
by being remote and transparent and writing, you provide everyone inside the organization. You reduce the distance between you
sure.
and those people. And I think when you're in person, it's hard to get that kind of
Right.
access in that way. Also, there's a scale thing, right? It's like 80 people, but in any case, that's my reflection. Thank you. That's very insightful. Please.
Um, then I think the other is you you have to train people to operate independently, but also knowing that it's impossible for anyone to ever operate truly independently. And I think that that does require a lot of investment in education. I don't mean like skill education, I mean domain mastery. Like, how does the business operate? What's the difference between a good decision and a bad decision in engineering and design and product? And uh and I think it also remote really begs for more senior employees. I hear that all the time. And this is, I think, an industry problem. Where do junior employees cut their teeth? But um, just the to do it well is begging for you to really focus on senior employees and treat them like senior employees, which again goes back to
Mm,
giving them giving them enough information to operate more independently more often. Otherwise, you're spending all of your time on the communication and none of your time in the actual the building of product
yeah,
and marketing.
yeah. Wow, this has just been so enlightening. Tony Stubblebine, CEO of Medium. Head over to medium.com to write your next great piece. It is a wonderful platform. I'm heartened to hear that you've started this incredible turnaround. That is really great because we do need more excellent places to do reading and writing and finding some great stuff. So I'm super excited about that. Thank you so much for spending some time with us and sharing your hard-earned wisdom on Great Mondays Radio.
I'll tell you what, it was hard earned. So thank you, Josh. Thank you for letting me share.